I want to welcome you to Pastor Blast. Today is Tuesday, January 7th. Happy New Year and a blessed Epiphany to you. Yesterday, January 6th, was the Epiphany of our Lord. Epiphany means revelation, disclosure, unveiling, and it follows closely on the heels of the Christmas season. This is a season of light, specifically where the glory of the exalted Christ shines forth. Shine, Jesus, shine, right? Things like the baptism of Jesus and Jesus turning water into wine and the miracle at Cana. And of course the transfiguration, where we get a snapshot of the exalted one during his earthly life. But every year, Epiphany begins with the Magi seeking out the one true King. Such an intriguing story, isn't it? It kind of stirs the imagination, the following the star. Scholars aren't sure if these magi were astrologers or astronomers. Were they scientists or superstitious? Perhaps they were Zoroastrian priests that studied the stars. Well, anyway, they launched their great search. And the truth is, Matthew doesn't say they were kings, or that they were wise men, or even that there were three of them, and nor does the gospel give them names like Melchior, Caspar, and Balthazar. Those are later additions from the tradition. But what we do know is that they were clearly outsiders to the Jewish faith, and they were called by God. Was it the burning star, their burning imaginations, or their burning need to know God? We are all spiritual. And that just means we all have this desire. We seek the transcendent. We have an appetite for the eternal, hunger for grace, a need for God. That's why Jesus says, I am the bread of life. And it's only in that relationship that contents the soul, and only grace that satisfies our spirits. I think everyone is created with this hunger, with this thirst. Now, we will try worldly things to satisfy, things like money and wine and sex and food and work and family. That's kind of sad because these are good things. They're God's gifts, but they were not meant to substitute for God. And they're beautiful and they're enjoyable in the right time, in the right place, but they cannot deliver what only God delivers. Well, the wise men, we'll just call them that for this sake of this Pastor Blast, they pass through Jerusalem, and there they meet King Herod, who is powerful and very paranoid, but he's surprisingly pleasant with these fellows. He says, yes, when you find the king, you come right back here, because I too want to worship him. The wise men leave Jerusalem, and you got to know, in that day, Jerusalem was the hub of power in the region. Architecture is grand, arsenal, the Roman arsenals there, and that's where the political power was centered. But they go to Bethlehem, which is more or less a cow town. It's 9 miles south. All you got's a feed store and a post office there. And it's in this obscure location, among the goats, the sheep, and the shepherds, they find the one true king, the baby Jesus, who's belching, crying, and discharging. See, the wise men, they give up their great wealth and their great learning in something of a conversion, don't they? And they offer their precious gifts and their even more precious lives to this one who is a humble king, a vulnerable Lord, an approachable God who dies on the cross and erupts from the tomb. This is the one we worship. And Paul writes to the Romans, and he says, therefore, I urge you, sisters and brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Don't be conformed any longer to the patterns of this world. Think of Jerusalem and Herod, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's the gift of Christ at Christmas. And that's the gift that you and I are called to embrace and to be transformed by. Blessed Epiphany.